I'm here with my local expert Ed Botwin from New York City, riding through the Bronx. He's an official greeter from the Big Apple Greeter organization here in New York City. He's taking me around, all voluntarily, free of charge, wonderful. And you know, really filling me in on New York City, all the different boroughs, the history, and particularly the Bronx. We're sitting now on a bus, Ed, and we're heading where now? We are in the middle of the South Bronx now, right?
Yes, we're on the edge of Hunts Point, and we're heading down toward the hub, which is a meeting place of several main streets. And because of that, it's called the hub. It also is a big shopping area.
Okay, cool. Tell me a little bit about the history of the Bronx and some of the difficulties that happened in the 1960s, 70s, and how the Bronx has been rejuvenating itself.
Well, after the end of World War II, the city, or the country, I should say, embarked on a program of road building to facilitate people getting out to the suburbs from city centers. And unfortunately, the Bronx is the only part of the city of New York on the mainland of North America. So the easiest way to get out of Manhattan was to build highways through the Bronx.
And this was mostly Robert Moses at the time, right?
Well, he was in charge at the time, but yes, he was more or less in charge.
Yeah.
And so they built 3 highways through the Bronx, including one called the Cross Bronx Expressway, which displaced 40,000 middle-class families.
Wow.
And at that point, it turned the Bronx into a shambles, a dusty place, with a lot of injured housing and deserted housing. And this became a place where many Puerto Rican immigrants who were just coming up from Puerto Rico were able to live very cheaply, and consequently, there was tremendous strain on the real estate market here, with a lot of out-of-work families teaming up to live together to save money, which caused many of the landlords to be unhappy about the lack of profit they were making in their properties. And at this point, also, the city was building low-rent projects for poor people, and they were saying that if you had, you were homeless, you would get priority in the new buildings. Consequently, this caused a certain amount of lawlessness on the part of some of the owners who wanted to collect their insurance money, and how should I put it, collusion with some of the local people to build fires around town to injure the property, not necessarily to destroy it, but to injure it in such a way that people had to be vacated and allowed to go into these new high-rise, low-rent projects. So there was a certain amount of hanky-panky going on at the time.
Yeah.
And that's when the Bronx got its reputation for fires and misdeeds. There was also a drug problem here at the time, as well as a general feeling of lawlessness amongst many displaced people.
Now, we drove by an area before where you showed me a picture of President Jimmy Carter, who basically visited an area that was completely devastated in the 70s. What was that area called? Because it was rebuilt, right?
It's been rebuilt. It was called Charlotte Street.
Charlotte Street.
And it was rebuilt several years later by a new head of urban renewal, and they built it not as high-density living, but a series of ranch houses, almost like being out in the suburbs themselves. And so that has remained that way ever since.
Very interesting.
Since that time, there's been much more logical construction going on, heavier population per acre or per block, but also quite reasonable.
Oh, what's this here? Ambulance. Okay, fire department. But everything I've seen so far actually looks pretty respectable, pretty clean. I mean, I wouldn't really be afraid of walking down these streets here.
Well, I'm very pleased.
Yeah.
It's come a long way. There's much more political activism here than there used to be. There's much more awareness of urban living. We have most of the people who came here originally who had to Seaport.
Yeah.
And so getting used to an urban environment is a little bit special as well.
Exactly. Very interesting. And we're going to stop off at the hub?
We're going to go to the hub, and there we can walk around a little bit.
That's great.
Before we get onto the summit.
Okay,